In the last video, we looked at two arguments about animal ethics made by Peter Singer. The first argument against speciesism concluded that humans have duties towards animals. The second argument concluded that eating meat is an expression of speciesism and that humans ought to stop eating meat. In this video, we will look at a response by the philosopher Roger Scruton. Scruton was a recent philosopher who wrote on a large number of interesting topics, including art and ethics. While Singer, as we saw, is a utilitarian, Scruton approached the issue of animal ethics from a deontological, that is, a Kantian, perspective. According to Scruton, rights imply duties. Humans have rights because we have duties. For instance, I have the right to freedom because I have the duty to protect the rights and freedoms of all humanity. It's that duty which grounds my right to freedom. Now recall that Singer argued that the capacity to experience pleasure and pain, what he called sentience, is the boundary of moral concern. Against this, Scruton argues that the capacity to be able to perform one's duties, to be able to be responsible to performing one's duties, is the boundary of moral concern. So, do animals have rights? If so, reasons Scruton, then they would also have duties. And if they have duties, they must be held responsible for performing those duties. But here's the question, can we hold animals responsible for performing duties? Scruton says that a creature with rights is duty-bound to respect the rights of others. The fox would be duty-bound to respect the right to life of the chicken, and whole species would be condemned out of hand as criminal by nature. But any legislation would drive predators to extinction. If we do ascribe rights to animals, we would have to promote them as full members of our moral community. But if we did that, we would tie them to obligations that they simply cannot perform or comprehend. And that would just be senseless and cruel. In other words, animals don't have rights because they don't have duties. We still ought to respect animals, since only a cruel and vicious person would mistreat animals. But what about eating meat? Scruton thinks that the meat production industry has made vast progress in recent years on the question of animal cruelty. He argues that today, animals that are raised for meat have the best life that they possibly could have. He says that they enjoy a peaceful life in pasture and that they enjoy a quick and painless death. On the meat industry, Scruton says that, quote, a good farmer rearing sheep and cattle on pasture, keeping dogs, cats, and horses as domestic animals, and free-range chickens for eggs contributes more to the sum of animal welfare than 1,000 suburban dreamers stirred into emotion by a documentary on television. He also says, quote, it would be lamentable if the moral high ground in the debate over livestock were conceded to those who have neither the capacity nor the desire to look after the animals whose fate they bewail, and not to the farmers who do their best to ensure that these animals exist in the first place. Obviously, Singer and Scruton come to very different conclusions. You will have to think very carefully and deeply for yourself whose argument you think is better. And perhaps you can find meaningful middle ground between these two arguments.